Hello YouTube people, welcome back to the channel and a very happy new year to you all. If you're new here, I'm George and I take photos for a living and for fun. It is basically all I do. Now today we are going to do something a little bit different. You may be wondering what a photographer like me carries around in the camera bag, and so today we're going to take a little look inside said camera bag. Now, before we dive in, I want to make it very clear that the kit I have is largely considered to be a great base for all kinds of photography, from travel and street to landscape and portraits and maybe even weddings, although I don't know a whole lot about that. Either way, it is a setup that's perfect for me, and what's perfect for me might not necessarily be the same for you. It is all about finding a setup that you are comfortable with and that allows you to take photos as seamlessly as possible. Unless, of course, you are into shooting film. I should also mention that there's a huge difference between what I lug around for my personal shoots compared to what I pack for client projects, and even how I carry it around. Anyway, I'm going to start off with literally everything that's in my camera bag, which is, to be quite honest, fairly minimal. And at the end, I'll quickly show you what my day-to-day setup looks like. Anyway, let's get the ball rolling and take a look at the thing that holds it all together, which is my camera bag. Alright, so the bag I'm currently using is the 35-litre Moment Day Chaser, made in collaboration with my good friend Emmett Sparling. Now, I've been using this bag for the past 6 months or so, and it's been a solid companion on my adventures. Now, one of the things I love about this bag is how perfectly spacious it is, at least for my needs. Inside, I can easily fit my 15-inch MacBook Pro, a camera, 3 lenses, spare batteries, and memory cards. But not only that, it's also capable of holding enough clothing and other smaller items necessary for shorter weekend trips. Speaking of international weekend trips, I cannot tell you how beautiful it is to walk directly from the plane to the taxi rank without having to pick up check-in luggage. Genuinely one of the top experiences of the year for me. Now, you might also think that the extra compartments for non-camera items might be a little bit cramped, but I can fit more clothes than I need in it, plus snacks, as well as Indonesian Pokemon cards that I may or may not pick up every time I pass an Indomart on the island. As well as that, it's managed to survive the rain, sun, and the occasional piece of dog poop that is also common on the streets of Bali, thanks to its sturdy, weather-resistant material. Again, I swear this is not an ad. I know it sounds like one, but it's actually not. However, I'm sorry, Emmett, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. If you are the type of photographer that has 2 bodies, 7 different lenses, a drone, 3D goggles, all this shit, I can honestly say that it might not be the bag for you. But hey, no bag is perfect. All right, moving on. Let's take a look at my go-to camera, which is the Canon R5. Now, this is my main photo camera, and it's been in my hands almost every single day for the past 2.5 years. Firstly, I mean, Canon colors. I don't really think I need to expand on that. But in all seriousness, the Canon R5 is a powerhouse when it comes to image quality. As you may well know, it's got a 45 megapixel full-frame sensor and 5 to 8 stops of image stabilization when it's paired with certain lenses. So this camera has been an absolute dream, given how much I crave detail and clarity in my images. Whether I'm shooting dimly lit landscape scenes in East Bali or those energetic and bright street moments in India, I can always count on this little beast to deliver incredibly crisp images no matter what. The high resolution is also particularly useful for creating larger prints, and also ensures that my photos maintain their quality even when blown up to ridiculous sizes. I should also state that it has 14 stops of dynamic range, I think, so I'm usually getting a ton of details in the shadows and highlights, which gives me a lot of flexibility in post-production. And I love editing, so that's a huge win for me. Funnily enough, I actually had to use my old Mark IV the other day to create a few YouTube thumbnails, and it actually made me fall in love with this camera all over again. All right, moving on, let's have a look at my lenses. And here I've got the 24-70 2.8, which is pretty much my go-to lens for all situations. To be honest, it's attached to my camera 99% of the time, and whenever somebody asks for a recommendation, maybe they just want one lens, I'm going to suggest this. It is versatile, sharp, and it captures everything from wide landscapes to more intimate details, and it also means I don't really feel the need to swap lenses. As you can imagine, I never really know what kind of scene I'm going to stumble upon while I'm on the road, but given I'm often drawn to scenes that include people in a greater landscape, which could range from, I don't know, a wide open rice terrace with a farmer at work and a volcano in the background, maybe an inquisitive face in the shadows of a store, or a man in a full trance on the beach, the 24-70 is often capable of capturing it all. Whatever it is that I end up shooting, capturing the moment with as little fuss as possible, i.e. changing lenses, is of most importance to me, and in my opinion, this lens is the most suited to that. Here's a thought though, I have actually been considering experimenting with prime lenses. I reckon it could be a fun challenge to maybe help refine my eye for photos at specific focal lengths. I obviously love the flexibility of the 24-70, but there's something about the discipline of a prime lens that's kind of tempting to me. And I don't know, maybe it'll push my creativity. I don't really know, but it's something I'm considering. All right, so next up we have got the 15-35 f2.8, which is basically my ticket to capturing vast landscapes and cityscapes. As you come to think of it, it's also very useful for very busy street scenes, particularly ceremonies. Now, I fondly remember using my old wide-angle lens for the first time when I first visited Quarry Bay in Hong Kong back in 2016. You'll probably know the building I'm talking about, but if you don't, then you've probably been living under a rock for the past 6 or 7 years. Either way, it was this lens that allowed me to capture the full expanse of the complex without having to do some kind of panoramic stitch, and for scenes such as this, it is absolutely perfect. Having said that, I rarely go below 20mm these days, as I'm not a huge fan of the distortion that it creates, but I will typically switch to this lens should I feel the need to get up close and personal to a larger, more densely packed group of people. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think I last used this lens at least a bunch when I was shooting Melasti ceremony in Bali, as well as a couple of ceremonies in Varanasi. In some of those ceremonial religious settings, oftentimes I'll be shooting scenes, in tight interior spaces, and I guess where I don't really want to intrude on people or have to, I don't know, weave in and between the crowds in those tight spaces, I can chuck on this wide angle lens, and it allows me to get a little bit more creative with my compositions while remaining in the same spot. Now that we've covered that lens, I think, yeah, of course, that makes sense. We're going to move on to my telephoto, my 7200, which is also, funny enough, my least used lens. All right then, so a little bit more about my least used lens, the 70-200 f2.8. Now, although I don't use it, it is an incredibly versatile lens for capturing subjects from a distance, and especially when you want to compress a scene and create a sense of scale between your subject and the background. I guess not only that, but it's also pretty useful if you want to punch in on individual subjects and create that bokeh effect surrounding them, which I guess can also be quite nice at times. I think one of my favorite shots I probably got with that lens in recent years would be one from Kintamani, which I shot at around 150mm, and it really allowed me to show the scale of the volcano mountain going in the background against the elements in the foreground, such as the busy street and the motorbike in the distance as well. Now, one of the perks, obviously about a lens like this is the image quality that it provides and how well it works in low light situations. Not only that, I think I already mentioned this, but it also obviously works well if we're trying to create a bokeh effect around one particular subject. And I think I used that lens to that effect on a project with Marriott earlier this year. No, that's not my typical kind of photo. It's really not a photo I'm, particularly in love with or anything, but it did seem that the client really enjoyed them, and so I guess that's a win for me as well. Either way, I don't really use this lens, and if I had to be quite honest, I'm considering selling it for perhaps a 100-500, which I think might create some slightly more interesting and unique perspectives. I know we've got a trip coming up soon. I say we because Harry's standing over there, but we have a trip to Hong Kong coming up in February. We've actually got a trip with the Hong Kong Tourism Board, and I think a 100-500 might perform better there and help me to create some shots that would kind of stand out against the shots that this lens creates. But we'll see. If I do end up getting it, I'm sure I'll start making videos about it, and so you'll probably be the first to know. Anyway, we've covered all the lenses, why I like them, which I use and which I don't, and I think with that we can move on to my drone. My drone is the DJI Mavic 3 Cine, and there's a couple things I really like about this drone. It's got a micro four thirds sensor and something like 12.8, maybe 13 stops of dynamic range, which means it has exceptional image quality, especially during low light conditions, things like dawn dusk or, I don't know, super cloudy days, stuff like that. It works pretty well. Probably my favorite part about this drone though, and the Mavic 3 series in general, is that you get up to 46 minutes of flight time, which simply allows for more time in the air and taking cool photos without having to come back and change your batteries. I cannot tell you how many times I had to bring my Mavic 1 or Mavic 2 back to me because of low battery, which meant I missed out on a bunch of photos, often in peak conditions. And when that would happen, I'd be in a bad mood. I'd then go home to Soph in a bad mood, and trust me, that's not a good thing. If you have a girlfriend, you know that's not a good thing. All right, so enough about my bad moods and coming over to Soph like that. It's also got variable aperture from 2.8 to 11, which gives you a whole lot more control in different lighting conditions, which is super helpful for both photographers and I suppose videographers alike. At least that's what I think Harry would tell me. I mean, he's the videographer, so I trust him on that. I honestly don't know a fucking thing about video, so just take his word for it. All right, another benefit is that this Mavic 3 Cine, the Cine line, has a 1 terabyte internal storage, which I guess was designed for the ProRes video files. But if you're anything like me and you forget your SD cards all the time, it is an absolute lifesaver. I think I actually may have gone through a period. I mean, of course, I backed up my photos every time I went on a shoot, right? Every single time. But I'm pretty sure I've shot with this drone from, let's see, I got it pre-release, so maybe August, September 2021. I think I shot on it for about 16, 17 months. And I had nowhere near run out of space on the SSD. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I did end up clearing the SSD because I started getting OCD and I wanted to look through some of my photos on the playback menu. But yeah, it's pretty great if you're a dumbass like me and you forget your SD cards all the time. Highly recommend it for that reason, if not that reason alone. Anyway, with all that said, lots of pros. How about the negatives? I mean, this drone obviously doesn't have a 3x tele lens, which is actually why I'm considering upgrading to the 3 Pro. I do have an Air 3 that has a 3x lens, but the quality really doesn't compare to the 3 Cine or the Pro. So, I mean, the Air 3 is just gathering cobwebs like my 7200 over here. So I should probably sell that and sell this and look at getting a 3 Pro. Okay, I think that's enough about my cameras and my drones. As I said earlier, pretty minimal setup. It's just the body, 3 lenses, and drone. Now we're going to move on to accessories before I talk very, very quickly about what my daily setup looks like. First up, I've got this polarizer from PolarPro. Thank you, Harry Pope, for the polarizer. And this is mostly used to create those contrasty blue skies that you may have seen in some of my photos. Also works really well on metallic surfaces, so think leaves, glass, water. Honestly, trust me, give it a go. It also works wonders on rainy days as well. Really hopes that foliage to pop. Okay, next up is my tripod, which is the Ulanzi Zero F38. Super lightweight, sturdy enough in most conditions, but to be quite honest, I never use it. I'm not much of a tripod guy, but it is there should I need it. Although I imagine it will suffer a similar fate to the previous 2 or 3 tripods I've owned, where I've either left it in a plane, I've left it in a taxi, or, you know, it's kind of just fucked me off. So I've just left it wherever I was. Yeah, I guess time will tell. Then I've also got this Peak Design quick release camera strap. Works pretty well, very convenient with a quick release design. But again, like my tripod, I never use it. I honestly find it kind of annoying when I've got it over my shoulder and the camera keeps bashing into my side. If I'm out shooting, I'd probably rather just have, I said I'd probably rather have my camera in my hand. I would rather have my camera in my hand. As for SD cards, I'm using these Sony Tough SD cards, which are dust, dirt, and waterproof, which is ideal, I suppose. I always carry a few extra with me, as there is nothing worse than running out of space at the worst possible moment. Always have an extra card or 2 with you. It's a good practice. I've also got this very cheap cable bag from Amazon to hold my SSDs, USB-C cables, and my other chargers while I'm out on the road. Then there's this Anker portable charger, which is a lifesaver on sunrise missions, and for a numpty like me, who never charges his phone overnight, it is absolutely perfect. And of course, I have an AirTag, because let's face it, this bag contains my livelihood, and if I were to lose this bag, which I have, I need to know exactly where it is, so I can go kicking down doors to retrieve it as soon as possible. Okay, accessories done. we're going to head outside very briefly, and I'm going to show you what my daily setup looks like, and then we can wrap up this video. Alright then guys, so we're currently outside my house, and I mentioned earlier that I was going to show you what exactly my day-to-day setup looks like. Right here, I've got my Canon R5 and the 24-70mm lens. I'm filming this on a GoPro, which I didn't mention in my cameras or accessories, but I do use this sometimes to kind of film myself while I'm on the road. And I've also got this little bag from Uniqlo, which usually contains, you know, spare SD cards and spare batteries as well. As for my camera bag, you know, day-to-day camera bag, this thing right here is it. It's my scooter, my M-Max. As you can see in here, we've got a towel, which is usually what the cats sleep on outside. My 24-70 on the R5 goes right there, and boom. That's my daily setup. I find it to be incredibly accessible. I don't have to faff around, you know, opening bags, trying to get my camera out when there's a moment happening right in front of me. And yeah, that's it. Let's go back to the studio. Alright then, ladies and gents, I suppose that's about everything that's inside my camera bag. There's a few bits of gear that I do also have my eyes on that, you know, obviously I haven't even mentioned. So if I do end up picking that gear, you know, I'm thinking like an M11, 28mm 1.4 lens to go with it, maybe that 100-500 that I mentioned earlier. Well, then I'll probably end up remaking this what's in my camera bag video, and I'll probably end up making individual videos about those pieces as well. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this and found it kind of useful to some extent. And yeah, with that, I will catch you in the next video.